Hi, welcome to our podcast. I will be your host, Connor Torres. Joining me is
Daniel Hudson.
And Mohammed Sirza.
Today we're going to be talking about Macbeth and how the war with Scotland and Norway ties into that. So, to start off, just a basic overview of Macbeth. Macbeth was a Scottish king who ruled from 1040 to 1057, who received a prophecy from a trio of witches saying that he would become king. And ultimately, this prophecy leads to his lust for power and childlike obsession with power, ultimately leading to his death.
Thank you, Connor. Well, we all know that Macbeth is named after a person. So who is Macbeth?
So Macbeth was a Scottish king who his main achievement was actually before his rule in 1040 to 1057 when, during a Viking raid, the Scottish general at the time was dying in battle from his injuries. And he entrusts Macbeth with leading the army because he was the most fierce warrior. And ultimately, hearing this, Macbeth's lust for power even gets out of hand, and he will do anything to get his power. And by doing that, he kills his cousin, King Duncan, in battle. But in the play Shakespeare, it says he kills him in bed, which isn't right. But yeah, that's pretty much just the overview of it.
So, Connor, what time did Macbeth's reign take, and what was his timeline?
So his reign was 1040 to 1057, and his first loss was in the Battle of Dunsane, where that infuriates him, as you can see, and he keeps trying to get his power by going even harder and more powerful, which ultimately leads to his death in the Battle of Lumpen in 1057, where King Malcolm at the time kills him, and King Malcolm III was actually his successor. And after killing him, he calls him the Dead Butcher, which he was basically meaning that, like, he would do anything to get his power, and that, like, no matter what, he didn't care what he did to people. Like, if he killed them, he didn't care what he did. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. And Muhammad, how is authority portrayed in Macbeth?
Thank you, Connor. So, according to this really good JSTOR article I read by by Patrick Colin Hogan, authority is often portrayed through fatherhood and kingship, specifically with, Duncan and another character, Banquo, who symbolizes this patriarchal order in the tragedy. Except Macbeth kind of disrupts this king and father order of life by, as we all know, killing Duncan and rejecting the way of fatherhood and kingship. Now, what does this mean for Macbeth the tragedy and the Scottish-Norwegian War? So the Scottish-Norwegian War already threatened the stability of Scotland, and with Macbeth's legitimate rise to power causing further chaos, it really suggests that Hogan's trying to push the idea that trying to get power through illegitimate means will only bring just further chaos, as we can even see in the tragedy, that Macbeth will ultimately be killed as a result of his illegitimate rise to power. Daniel, so with Macbeth being taught in many high schools today, and even ours, how can people today learn from Macbeth?
So, in the past, we see Macbeth. He was very unethical throughout his entire career because we can see he was a very fierce warrior, and with that ethical leadership, he wouldn't have been able to lead Scotland to the victory, which was such a tough battle. Now, his lack of ethical leadership was the whole reason that he was able to win. On top of that, he had ambition without limits. And this was another reason that he was able to see the battle, see that they were most likely to lose, but he still went in thinking they were going to win, and it's the reason they won. Now, because of this, later during his rule, once he had killed King Duncan, he was very unethical. He killed King Duncan. He was not a good leader during the time in Scotland. He caused political instability. And we can see this nowadays with big corporate structures, with monopolies that are just trying to make money. We see people who lack limit with ambition, and they lack ethical leadership, which is why if we look at it from a bird's eye view, we can see that this is not the way that the country is supposed to be run. This is not the way that corporate structures or kingdoms that in the past were supposed to be run. And when students look at this, they can easily tell that it's wrong, and it's the reason that so many businesses fail nowadays. So, Connor, why is Macbeth different than the normal protagonist that Shakespeare chooses?
So yeah, that's a good question. So when you think of when you think of Shakespeare heroes, I think you think of like a selfless, mature hero who wants good for people. And I'm not saying Macbeth didn't want good for people, but I think his obsession with power overruled his want for the good of people, and he would do anything. Like as I said, King Malcolm called him the Dead Butcher. He would do anything to get what he wanted, and he didn't care how brutal he would have to kill people or what it would take to get to that. And I think I can relate that to Anakin Skywalker, who his lust for power actually killed himself and his wife. Where if you look at Macbeth, he actually killed his wife because his wife kills herself because of her. She couldn't handle the stress from being married to him because of everything he was causing her, based off like his power and what he was doing. She just couldn't handle it. So, Muhammad, how is Shakespeare adaptation realistic?
So, in terms of realism and how it connects to our own real world, the Scottish-Norwegian War and Macbeth and the characters portrayed in the tragedy are very real people. But in the words of Ben Jonson, the tragedy is very loosely tied to historical facts and is really just a blend of fact and fiction. Such things like location, timings of battles, and even the personalities of the people that we see in the tragedy are more or less at the hand of Shakespeare. For example, in the source by Ben Jonson, Duncan versus Macbeth's fight in 1040 was in the tragedy at Burnham Hill, when in reality it was in Elgin. Now, the play suggests that, and while people can read the Macbeth, that it can be tied to the real world, but in reality it is really just loosely tied and not necessarily a historical depiction of the Scottish-Norwegian War.
Thank you. And Daniel, how does Macbeth's tyranny impact Scotland's ability to unite against external threats?
So, Connor, when we look at it from a historical standpoint, we see that all the nobles sided with Macbeth out of fear. Macbeth would kill anyone who was close to him, specifically he killed King Duncan, his wife killed herself, and all these other people that he would just kill out of anger. So if we put ourselves in the shoes of one of these nobles at the time, who is supposed to be defending the country, they're supposed to be giving orders to stop Norway, who's going to be attacking Scotland later and was previously attacking Scotland, you realize that if you made a single mistake, Macbeth would have just killed you. And while it seems trivial, it has an extremely large impact on everyone's decisions. It makes it so that while during a war, people are supposed to strategize, they're supposed to come up with specific ideas, they're supposed to come up with creative ideas that would cause a solution, and they would win the war, correct? But because of Macbeth's ability to put fear in his nobles, they played the safe game, they wouldn't do things that they thought they would lose, and ultimately it cost the country a lot of lives, and it cost the country its political stability.
Thank you. And I think that's all of our questions for today. But to summarize this podcast, thank you guys for being here. I think in conclusion, Macbeth serves as a profound exploration of ambition, authority, and the consequences for lust of power. The play highlights the chaos resulting from Macbeth's authoritarian rule, and this not only disrupts natural order, but also weakens the kingdom's power against external threats. I believe Shakespeare's adaptations effectively show the timeless themes of moral integrity and dangers of ambition. This story shows young listeners about ethical leadership and the balance between personal ambition and societal responsibility. Ultimately, Macbeth remains a compelling reflection on the human condition and the complexities of powers. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys.
No problem.